Welcome to Wisconsin in Focus. I'm JD Davidson. There's no question Wisconsin will play a key role in the upcoming November general election. In fact, it very well may be the most important state in the nation. Leading up to the vote, Wisconsin election officials don't expect any problems, but that doesn't mean they're not looking at what issues could have the biggest impacts. Joining us today is Ben Yount, Wisconsin contributor for the Center Square. Ben, what are commissioners saying about their concerns for November?
I thought that this would come down to an answer along the line of counting absentee ballots. I thought that the biggest concern from the Elections Commission would be restoring faith in the Wisconsin electoral system. I mean, remember, it was just 4 years ago that this state was one of the states that President Trump said was stolen from him. And we could spend hours relitigating the Gableman investigation and talking about Zuckerbucks and democracy in the park and what happened in Wisconsin's nursing homes. And there was something that happened in 2020. Just what it was, we'll never know because no one was ever pressed. So I really thought when the question, and this was in a WisPolitics interview with Ann Jacobs, who's the head of the Elections Commission, and Republican Elections Commissioner Don Mills, when the question was, what's your biggest fear for the 2020 election? I really did think that they would say that people don't believe, that there's a crisis of faith. Instead, they went in a complete and opposite direction. They both had similar answers, but it wasn't at all what I thought it would be. Here's Jacobs with her biggest fear for the 2024 election.
I do worry about a concerted attempt to shut down voting day of or evening of. I worry about attempts to prevent the canvassing of votes. Those sort of attempts to prevent Wisconsin's votes from going to Washington and be counted is probably my greatest concern. On the other hand, we've never seen anything like that happen before, and I do have trust in our clerks and in our boards of canvass to do the right thing.
She didn't say who she's worried about. She didn't say Trump supporters. She didn't say outside lawyers. She didn't deliver the other half of that answer as to who she's most worried about. And she's right. We've never seen anything like that happen before in the history of Wisconsin elections. But we also never saw anything like what happened in 2020. So that line's not calming down a lot of people. Don Mills, on the other hand, or on the similar hand, he said his fear, too, is outside agitators. But Mills was a bit more specific about just who he thinks is going to agitate.
I worry about malign actors trying to stir up distrust in election results. And I'm not necessarily talking about candidates. I'm talking about foreign countries. I'm talking about some of these bad actors. You know, we had an encampment about a 9-iron shot from a polling place in Madison. And I worry that if clerks in some of these college towns aren't careful or aren't prepared, we could have, we might have an occupation. I think it's unlikely.
But that's the one thing
that's the thing that I worry about this fall.
But no, that's the fear. And again, it's surprising when you hear it out loud. But like with most things in Wisconsin elections, when you really think about it, it's not that shocking that this is what 2020 did to the state of Wisconsin. This is the legacy of the 2020 election, that not even the people who run the election have ultimate confidence. They still fear in the back of their mind that something bad is going to happen. And as a voter, that's not necessarily warming to hear.
No, it's worrisome. It really is worrisome. And you said it absolutely right. I think we're all thinking of this, but until somebody says it out loud, it's kind of like tucked away in a corner. Well, now I'm concerned, and I just feel like, I don't know. I mean, I feel like something somehow, somewhere is going to happen, and we're not going to know on election night or even months after that. And unfortunately, while the commissioners in Wisconsin may not be overly concerned, I feel like maybe they're a little more concerned than they're letting on.
You got to remember that in the summer of 2020, it was a violent summer, that you had George Floyd riots, you had Jacob Blake riots here in Wisconsin. I mean, Kenosha burned for 3 nights. That wasn't stopped by the National Guard or the police. That wasn't stopped by Governor Evers. That wasn't even stopped by President Trump at the time. Kyle Rittenhouse brought the summer of violence in 2020 to an end when he shot 3 people down in Kenosha. So that is still very much part of the thinking here in Wisconsin, that we saw what was going to happen when things got bad. We have not had a violent summer at all here in 2024. The protesters who showed up at the Republican National Convention, it was very tame, very sort of, hey, hey, ho, ho, these Republicans have got to go. We're waiting to see what we get in Chicago at the Democratic National Convention. You know, let's not forget, President Trump was shot in the head in Pennsylvania.
That counts as violence.
Yeah, in early July, but there were no riots after that. That's what I meant as we have had a relatively violent free summer. That there have not been the riots. The last time we saw anything, Don Mills referred to it, campus protests. You had students at UW-Madison who were threatening to take over the campus. Same thing in Milwaukee. The chancellor's been pushed out because of that. The reality on the ground is you don't know who's going to be the angry side here in 2024. You don't know who's going to take to the streets if their person doesn't win. And yeah, you know, we've got over 1,800 different clerks in Wisconsin. I mean, thousands and thousands and thousands of polling places. And it wouldn't take much for somebody to cause all manners of chaos by grabbing a ballot box, by going and organizing a sit-in. And, you know, it's the sort of, when you're young and dumb and you're just driving around on a motorcycle with no helmet and, you know, hitting curbs and woo, and it's only after you see somebody crash, you're like, oh my God, that could have been me. This could be dangerous. And I hope that election managers across Wisconsin read our story, listen to what Jacobs and Mills are saying, and at least put pen to paper to have a plan in case something were to go wrong, to talk to somebody about this. Because, yeah, we don't need another election in Wisconsin that is questioned from top to bottom forever and ever and ever. Because, look, there are only so many times you cannot believe an election before you just don't believe in any elections.
Well, here's hoping to a peaceful early November. Ben, thanks for joining us today. Listeners can keep up with this story and more at thecentersquare.com.